Hey, greetings. Thanks for joining me. Spread in Alaska. What I wanted to share with you today, it comes from Tatiana and Nikolai, lifelong residents of Alaska, of Russian and Tlingit descent. This happened outside of Yakutat, just a couple years back. They have since sold the property to new buyers, new owners or whatever, and gave full disclosure. What happened with them is they had inherited this cabin from an uncle, and so how it ended up working out is over the course of 5 years, it was in disrepair. So over the course of 5 years, they were going in and out over the years, just repairing and tidying up and what have you. And their issues started about the second year into the renovation part, because no one had been there for 20 years, something like that. There was a squabble over the Tongass National Forest and some kind of land grab or something or another. That anyway, there was, legal matters that had to be sorted out. So they finally gained access. Second year into the renovations, they were okay. Tatiana is 10 years older than Nikolai, brother and sister. So Nikolai was fixing this trail next to the cabin. They did all the interior stuff where the squirrels got in and wreaked havoc and all that. But what Nikolai was doing is there was a couple switchbacks going up behind the cabin as a trail that led up and away from the cabin to get to the backside of the property. And he had ran into a bear a couple different times the year before, so he decided he's going to clear cut just that switchback area. Had a Australian Shepherd. It was Tatiana's. And so after he's done clear cutting this little switchback area, Tatiana's dog is with them, and he was just using a little trimmer, handheld trimmers and a weed whacker kind of deal, just cutting down the small vegetation, leaving the bigger stuff. But he wanted to be able to see bears as he was going back and forth, and just opening it up a little bit, because everything over the years had kind of crowded in around the cabin. So as he was finishing up, he had been making noise for hours. He wasn't paying attention to the dog. He thinking back, Nikolai said that the dog alerted several different times, and he was just busy with the weed whacking and figured if it was a bear, the bear would hear the weed whacker and just move on. He wasn't sensing any danger. They had firearms with them, but had him in the cabin. He was complacent. So as he's kind of just gets done and the dog goes off again, he notices the dog is barking up the hill. So he's like, okay, it must be a curious bear watching me. So he goes, let me look. He looks around a little bit and starts getting a weird feeling like he's being watched. So he says, okay, let me just get my stuff back to the cab and arm myself and see if I can find this bear and run it off. Well, he goes back to the cabin. He gets his pistol and he straps on his chest holster. He had a .454 Casull, and decided me and the dog are going to walk up the hill. Tatiana at this time wasn't with them. This was 2 years into the renovation. She was with her fiance Robert, and they weren't going to be in until the next season. So it was just him there himself with his sister's dog. So he hikes up there, sees nothing, kind of looks around, looks at what he saw, some indentation into the ground, but just like here where I'm at now, it's a bunch of moss. I'll show you in just a second. That anything that compresses it's hard to make out. So he assumed it was a double step on a bear track. Thought nothing of it, goes back, continues on doing what he's doing for another few days before he ends up leaving. 3 years pass, not a problem. They're tidying things up. And when things got really, really bad, this was just a few years back, Tatiana was there with her fiance Robert. They were getting ready to be, they've since been married, but fiance at the time. Their dog named Roscoe, and Nikolai. So the trip started out weird, because when they all arrived, they were walking up to the cabin, going back and forth with supplies, just chatting it up. Robert's first trip there. Now, Robert was new to Alaska. Tatiana met him outside of Alaska and wanted to share in what they were doing. They're remodeling family cabin, you know, they're just getting out into the wild. Well, Robert's walking, taking the lead, grabs some stuff and is walking the lead, and gets hit center chest with a rock, a little bigger than a marble, and it hit him hard. According to what they shared, hit him real hard in the chest, and he immediately stopped and was looking around like, who in the hell's throwing a rock at me? Dog goes off. As soon as it was like a simultaneous thing, gets hit center chest, kind of looks around, the dog takes off that direction, just raising hell. Gets about 10-15 feet in front of Robert and stops immediately and hauls ass back down to the beach. Now, Tatiana and Nikolai are just a few feet behind Robert. They see all this going on and they're like, what the hell's going on with Roscoe? Robert's like, something just threw a rock and hit me in the chest. And they were like, what? So they were just kind of talking about it for a minute, looking around, nothing, no sounds, not a peep. It was dead silent. So they decide to get everything in and then go look for Roscoe. So they hurry up, get everything in. Nikolai, since feeling weird a few years back, had always wore that 454 on his chest. Well, they gather up some stuff to go look for Roscoe, and Robert says he wants to stay at the cabin and wait for them. He had a little bit of jet lag from flying and some other stuff, so he wanted to unpack a little bit and just kind of chill out in the cabin a little bit. The getting hit with the rock really startled him a little bit, so he wanted to kind of seek shelter, I think. I mean, so anyway, so Tatiana goes with Nikolai. They're calling Roscoe. It's Tatiana's dog, so she's in the lead, and Nikolai's kind of looking around. And as they get down to the beach, Roscoe's just right down by the boat, just laid underneath the shade of the boat. The bow was pulled up on shore, and Roscoe was just laying there in the shade. Tatiana calls him. He comes over, touches her knee with his nose like he always did, and then turned around and ran back over and laid down in the shade. So she was like, man, he must be overheated, but that's not in his nature. He's usually not like that. So she coaxes him over, puts a lead on him, and they head back up to the cabin. Now, as they're going back up to the cabin, Nikolai's in the lead. He's going along. Boom. Same thing happened to him. Rock, center of the chest, a little bigger than a marble. Startled the crap out of him. He knew it came from off in front of him to his right, but he didn't see anything, so he was really thrown off. Like, I wonder if Robert's messing with me because something threw a rock at him, or he thinks the rock was thrown at him. So a little back and forth with Tatiana about who's throwing the rocks, and then they just kind of went inside because, again, it was dead quiet. As they're sitting around, they're unpacking stuff and everything like that. There was 2 windows on the back side of the cabin. One of the windows was in the master bedroom. The other window was in the kitchen part, and there was another window up above in the loft outlooking the back, which really didn't show much because there's just a bunch of brush and you could kind of see the switchback trail. Out of the front, 2 big windows, nice little deck, nothing overly ornate or anything like that. So as Tatiana's going into the master suite area to drag stuff in there, she notices that it's dark in the room, and so she goes to open the curtain, but as she turns to look towards the window, because she was busy with luggage, she wasn't paying attention. She just noticed it was dark in there, or darker, like the curtain was drawn. And as she's dragging the luggage and stuff in, she turns to go to open the curtain so she could see better, but as she turns and looks towards the window, this movement, dark movement, just moved out of the way of the window, and they heard a shrilling sound, kind of like a squealing, kind of like a pig would make, and they felt something heavy run away. As this happens, Nikolai happens to be in the kitchen putting some stuff up. He notices something movement out of the corner of his eye, because again, the windows are on the same plane. This thing moved out of the one way and then ran, and it caught his peripheral. So he looks out immediately, and this thing was gone. He just saw brown and it was gone. And so he was like, what the hell was that? Robert's freaked out, because he heard the squealing just like everyone else did. It reverberated in the cabin, this weird squeal. So everyone's on edge. Everyone's just not enjoying themselves one bit. Well, Tatiana's freaked out. They decide, okay, let's figure out what was going on. Nikolai goes outside with his pistol, of course. The dog wasn't going anywhere. Dog stayed inside. He goes around the backside, goes to look, and again sees these weird tracks that he chalks up to a double bear imprint. And he goes, oh, okay, it was a bear. You startled it. It made a weird noise, being startled, and took off. So he goes, I'm gonna go ahead and cut back some of the grass grew over the last couple years since his original clean out of the switchback. So he goes, I'm gonna clean it up in there so there's no hiding places immediately around the cabin. They won't feel as comfortable. You know, logical thinking. So as he's digging out the supplies, he's trying to get the weed whacker started, and he just chalked it up to a bear. Robert, however, was really still pale. He wasn't feeling good. He kept telling Tatiana, I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this. She said, just calm down. Everything will be all right. You've just been traveling. You're tired. You know, just lay down on the couch and take a nap, or go into the room and take a nap. So he goes, okay, I think I'll do that. So Robert goes and lays down. Not a wilderness guy. He came from the city. Just all this is new, and she just figured, you know, Tatiana figured he was overwhelmed with all the fresh air and weird shit that he's not used to. So he goes in and lays down. She comes back out. She goes outside to talk to Nikolai. Nikolai's still fighting this, trying to get this weed whacker started. It was brand new when he brought it there. He used it a couple times and it just sat. So he's working with the line, and it's got a little leak or something. It's just not operating properly. So as she's talking to him and he's dinking with it, they hear the dog growling. The dog had come out onto the porch because she left the door open for him. The dog came out onto the porch, which was right above them, and is growling. And they heard him walk over towards what would be if you're facing the cabin, it would be to the left-hand side of the deck. And the dog is barking off that direction, back around towards where that switchback trail is. So Nikolai's like, okay, I got this. It's that bear coming back. I'm gonna go pop a round off and run this thing off for good. Let it know humans are here. We run this and all that kind of thing. He comes around. He's barely paying attention because he's complacent. His own words. He was like, I was complacent. That I feared nothing there. Comes out and around. Starts walking up the trail a little ways, and as he's reaching to draw, he kind of looks up the trail, right? Because the dog is still up on the deck barking and squealing, making noise. So he looks up, and just out of view from where you are at the cabin, there's this dark figure standing up above him. It's approximately 35 yards away, has about 25 feet of elevation, and is tucked back a little ways, but just a big dark shadow. So he yells, hey, bear, bear, bear. He's not putting two and two together that bears don't stand up like that, for one, and when they do, they don't stand up that way for very long. So he figures, all right, draws a gun, bam, lets a round off. Nothing. That thing didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't budge. So he gets the creeps, and on top of that, his ears are ringing, and he just felt uncomfortable. So he decides, he backs off, goes back down to the cabin, tells his sister, hey, it was just the bear, I ran it off, even though it didn't move anywhere. They go inside. The weed whacker wasn't working. He says they get to it later. They explain to Robert the shot and all that, because he woke up from the shot because it was just right outside. He mellows back out, and it's quiet the rest of the afternoon. They just kind of mingle around inside the cabin, just doing little nitnoid things. Nikolai goes out, fires up the generator so they could watch a movie. They had a little 35-inch TV and a little DVD setup and stuff. So he fires up the the generator and comes back inside, and it's just getting to dusk. It's roughly about this time of year, maybe a little later in the season. And so comes back in, they start watching some random movie out of their selection there. And as they're doing so, the front windows of the cabin have no curtains whatsoever. Just the bedroom ones and the kitchen, and the upstairs loft had one. But with the upstairs loft, you're dealing with all the light splashing over from down below. So anyway, just trying to give you a layout of this cabin. So as they're watching this movie, the TV is just inside off to the side of where the door is on the wall, and then they got a little stand with the player and then a window right next to it. And then other side of the door, they got the other window, a little table. So they're watching this show, and as they're doing so, they felt the floor boom, 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 and then the generator stopped. They're like, what the hell is that? So immediately Nikolai jumps up, grabs his pistol out of the holster he had hanging right by the door, and grabs a flashlight and goes outside. Now, it's dusk out. It's not like dark where he needed the flashlight to see every step. He just needed the flashlight to light up the dark shadows, right? He comes out down the stairs, turns to go to where the generator is supposed to be, and they had a little Honda generator, and it's gone. Like gone. And he's just looking around like, what the hell? You know, he's listening for sounds of anyone moving away from the cabin or anything, because it shouldn't be that way. He goes up, cuts around the corner, and from what he said, as he was coming to the corner underneath the deck to look around the side, because they had a little platform where they would set the generator there, so it's not just reverberating under the deck but kind of can echo away. He said he got overwhelmed with the feeling of fear that he had never felt before. So much so that he cocked a hammer on the gun and was standing there slowly inching around, trying to shine the flashlight, trying to get up the nerve to look around the corner. Just as he peeks around the corner once, he doesn't see anything. Peeks around again a little further with the flashlight and notices that generator flying directly at him. Immediately ducks out of the way. Boom, boom, boom. It rolls down the hill a good distance. It was thrown with force. Give me just 1 second. I gotta change this battery out here. I'll be right back with you. So, sorry, I had to come all the way back. I didn't have my batteries with me, and I wasn't gonna hike another. Anyway, but so he peeks around the second time. Microwave generator almost takes his head off. Like it was very startling. Nikolai jumps back, is trying to wrap his mind around what the hell is going on, and is having a very hard time with it because a generator was just thrown at him. You know what I mean? Like, now it's getting on in the dark, and up here this time of year it doesn't necessarily get dark until 10-11, but it gets real dark in the canopy, under the canopy, in the tree lines. So immediately he backs away from that corner, back over to the stairs, runs up the stairs, and goes inside and tells them, hey, something threw the generator at me. Robert and Tatiana tell him, well, we heard noise, but we thought it was you brushing up against the cabin. It kind of shook the cabin a little bit after you went outside. And he goes, well, something just chucked it at me, and bears don't throw. So, and this is coming from the same side of the cabin that they speculate the rocks were thrown from. So they get together, they grab a high-powered rifle. Robert had a handgun he brought. It was a 9mm, but it was still a gun. So Nikolai hands Tatiana his .454 because she had shot it plenty of times. He takes the high-powered rifle. Robert has his gun. They all grab some flashlights, and they're gonna go investigate what the hell is going on. They go outside. He goes and retrieves the generator. They're all looking around. They're all beaming the underbrush and everything. Nothing. They all go together around the side. Nothing there. No sign of anything. and they go around the other side, same thing, around the back, same thing. They look up the little switchback trail, nothing, dead quiet, just eerily quiet. He goes and retrieves the generator, tries to fire it up, finally gets it running again, brings it back to where it's supposed to be, and gets all the plugs straightened out and all that, because it was relatively unharmed outside of taking this little tumble down the moss and whatnot. And it was a little Honda generator, so it was built good. So he cleaned it up, wiped all the gas that had spilled from tumbling and stuff, and fired it up. So they figured, okay, let's start it up, let's go watch this movie, and let's chalk this up as some weird shit in Alaska, right? They get back inside, they continue watching their movie, it ends without any issue. The generator's still running, and it's on in the dark now. And so Nikolai decides, I don't want to waste the gas, because he was guesstimating at least a half a tank of gas, and he just didn't want it to run until it ran out of gas and have to reprime it and all that. So he goes, I'll just go out there and shut it off. So he grabs his handgun, flashlight. Now, grant you, it was high freakout mode during this time. They didn't really enjoy the movie. They were speculating what was throwing shit, what in the hell was really going on here. They'd been there so many years, remodeling, there's never been a problem, all those things. They're going through it. Robert's talking about how he's freaked the hell out, doesn't want to be there anymore, it's no longer fun. Nikolai is with him. He goes, yeah, it's something threw that generator at me, I'm not happy with it. So he asked one of them, bring the high-powered rifle out, don't shoot me, I'm going down the stairs and under the deck, and I'll go around the side and shut off the generator, pull it underneath and secure it. So Robert volunteers. Tatiana's like, I'll hold a flashlight and shine light and stuff. So they got the high-powered rifle up on deck with a couple flashlights, kind of, spotlighting around, looking around. He comes down, shuts it off, secures it. They had a little flip top kind of cubby hole thing that they would stick their floats or life jackets or whatever else in, extra gas, that kind of thing, that latched underneath the deck, right? So he puts it in there, and he locks it up, and he comes back around, and they come up, and everyone's over to the right hand side of the deck at this point. They're all, Nikolai joins them. They're spotlighting. They don't see any tracks, and he's going over, yeah, I peeked my head out, and all I saw was a generator coming and ducked out of the way or whatever. They're going over what happened. As they're doing that, they feel the place, the deck shivering. It kind of shimmied as they're standing on it. And they're like, what the hell? Is that an earthquake? And then they're looking around. They turn. This thing is on the other side of the deck, looking at them all in their eyes as they turn around and beam it. There's a high-powered rifle. Nikolai's holding his pistol. No, everyone's in such shock. They're just staring, trying to wrap their mind around what they're seeing. He said very wrinkly in the face, really hairy below the nose, flat, broad nose, light grayish tint to the skin. Saw no color in the eyes, just saw black and a little glint of the eye shine from the flashlights. This thing showed its teeth and walked away. And they're all standing there. Robert drops the rifle. He's beside himself. Tatiana's in pretty much the same condition. She's trying to console him while quivering and crying, and Nikolai's stuck on what the hell was that? One of those WTF moments. He said all this happened real quick. They turned, they saw it looked at them, walked away and off into the darkness, back towards that switchback trail, right? So immediately they all scurry inside once they gather themselves in a few moments, because it was all very startling, very jarring to the system. They get back inside. Hardly any of them went to sleep until the wee hours of the morning when the sun was coming back up. It was quiet enough, they all ended up falling asleep for a couple hours. Nikolai was up first, and Tatiana woke up shortly after, and Robert was out because he had already been jet-lagged. He had been stressed and then staying up later and all the craziness and stuff. So Robert was dead to the world, sleeping, snoring, sawing logs, whatever you want to call it. Nikolai and Tatiana decide, let's go look for tracks. Tatiana gets her digital camera, make sure it's got power and all that, you know, fresh battery and everything. And Nikolai brings his 454 on his chest and brings a high-powered rifle, and Roscoe goes with them. They head back, they go up the switchback. They can see depressions in the ground, but they can't make out real tracks. They can't, nothing definitive, you know, they couldn't make out toes or anything like that. Now they know what they're looking for, per se. It's still, they still can't believe what they saw, because they're discussing it as they're walking up the switchback. You know, Tatiana's like, I can't believe we saw a Bigfoot. You know, they've heard stories and all that kind of stuff, but they've never, it was never on their radar that the stories were true. They just chalked it up to, you know, people get out in the woods too long and they start seeing things, you know, easy to dismiss. Well, they get up to the top of this switchback, and the trail cuts up a ridge line away from the property, back off into the brush. It's basically a game trail. So they decide, all right, let's walk back up in there a little ways and see if we can find any sign of anything. Nikolai hands Tatiana his 454 out of the holster, or restraps the holster to her to where she can have access to a gun. He's got the high-powered rifle. They walk up the trail. Roscoe's in the lead. Roscoe is not scared at this moment, so they're feeling okay and quasi-safe. They got guns and the dog's not alerting. Roscoe's an Australian Shepherd. At this point was probably about 7-8 years old. They go up the trail a little ways and it starts getting thick real fast, and they start feeling uncomfortable. They hear thrashing off to their right-hand side and decide whatever that is big and it's moving back down towards the cabin, so let's get out of here. They come back down the trail, and as they're coming down that ridge of the trail, it's all thick brush until it opens up and then hooks around to where the start of the switch back down to the cabin starts. So they're in thick brush up until this little opening, and Roscoe's the one in the lead. They get down, and you got to hook a sharp, almost like a 180 left on this to start down the switchbacks, right? Roscoe gets around that corner, and Tatiana's about 15-20 feet behind Roscoe, and Nikolai's about that distance behind Tatiana. They come down the hill. All of a sudden, they hear a real quick yelp. Whoop! And so immediately Tatiana draws a gun and is like, Roscoe, Roscoe. Runs around to where she can visibly see down the hill, because there's thick brush everywhere. There's nothing. Nothing. Roscoe is gone. She's thinking he must have got spooked, made a noise, and beelined it for the cabin, is what she's assuming at this point. So Nikolai's there, and he's like, what happened? What happened? They're looking for signs of Roscoe and everything, and she goes, he must have got spooked. And they heard brush moving up and to their left, just up the trail a ways. So they're getting really spooked out, because they got to go down this switch back to the cabin. So they start their descent. They get down to the bottom, and Tatiana's yelling for Roscoe, Roscoe. No sign of Roscoe. Roscoe is gone. They get over to the cabin, still no Roscoe. They get inside. Robert is up, and Robert was looking out that kitchen window. As she's asking him, did Roscoe come up onto the deck or anything? And Robert's not responding. Robert's just looking out the window and starts motioning without making a word, just starts motioning. They're trying to figure out what the hell. Weird noises, Roscoe's missing, and this thing was there last night. You know, it's really rough dealing with stuff like that. No matter what this thing's intentions are, it's creepy stuff, you know what I mean? So Tatiana goes over to Robert, looking out the window. Robert points. Tatiana looks. That thing is standing about 25-ish feet behind the cabin, just outside of the brush line, looking at the cabin. They don't. She yells for Nikolai. First she screamed, and then yelled for Nikolai. It's out back. It's out back. Nikolai runs out with the rifle. As he gets around to the side, he sees it standing there. It sees him with the gun, turns around, and basically runs straight up the hill. And this hills down southeast Alaska aren't just your little gradual grade of a climb. No, these are sheer rock and moss. This thing was gone. Went right straight up, gone, out of view. I mean, it made noises, but once it cleared their vision, he retreated back inside, and they immediately were like, okay, well, let's get out of here. So here's the strangest part. Outside of all this stuff, Roscoe's missing. All they heard was a yelp. They scampered down. Roscoe's gone. This thing threw a generator at Nikolai. Just getting hit in the chest with the rock. You know, they're going over all the things on the whys we should leave. So they're loading stuff up, they're packing stuff up, because, you know, they had been there just over a night, you know, I mean, and they had already unpacked some stuff, so they're going through packing stuff, and Tatiana's beside herself, grief-stricken about Roscoe. As Nikolai is sliding stuff out onto the deck, minimizing everything. Some stuff they were going to leave and come back for. They were grabbing more important stuff, clothes, important stuff, and packing light basically to go. Nikolai grabs some stuff, slings a rifle over his shoulder, tells Tatiana, don't let that pistol out of your sight, keep it on you. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'll keep an eye out for Roscoe. Heads down to the boat. Gets down to the boat. The boat is upside down. Big problem. One of these things, or that thing, while everything was going on, whether it did it overnight or not, because they hadn't checked up until this point, their 22-foot skiff was upside down, kicker upside down. Not good. Immediately Nikolai's like, what the fuck? Sets down the stuff, looks around up and down the beach, runs back, gets Tatiana and Robert. They come over, they flip the skiff over, fix everything that's disheveled. The kicker is toast. It had been submerged upside down. It wasn't gonna run, is what I mean. It's rebuildable, whatever, but it wasn't gonna run. So they disconnect it, pull it off of there. All the gas cans and stuff had already been brought up into that little storage cubby area where they kept the generator. Thankfully, they had a backup 25 horse up at the cabin in a different little compartment underneath the deck. They go up, they get it. Took a minute, but it started up. Now they're mobile again. They continue bringing stuff down. Instead of the 5-6 trips when they first got there, it was just like 2 or 3. Second trip back down, Tatiana's walking along and she's got the pistol in her hand and carrying some form of luggage. And as she's doing so, all of a sudden, Roscoe's there, right beside her. Happy to see her. She's in shock. They thought Roscoe was done. They just accepted it. You know, I mean, what do you do? Dog's gone, then it's back. They just accepted it and let it be. They go back down. They had one more trip. Nikolai went back up to the cabin. When he made the last trip up to the cabin to lock it up, he's looking out the back windows and everything. He goes upstairs into the loft where he was staying that night. And up there's a smaller, it's like a 2-foot by 2-foot square window out the back. And he's just kind of looking at it a second, just kind of going over in his mind, what the hell's going on here kind of deal. Well, as he's doing so, he notices movement up on the ridge, just barely in view of what he could see from that window. He goes back down outside and figures, I want to get down to the boat before anything else goes on. We'll get out of here. He does just that. Shuts everything up, locks a padlock, sets down bare boards in front of the door and some other stuff in front of the windows, and skedaddles down to the beach, and they all get out of there. The following, because they didn't come back all that year. They didn't come back, they didn't talk about it. Nikolai brings one of his good buddies. We'll say his name's Jeff. Jeff and Nikolai show up. They retrieve the ruined outboard that needs to be broken down and rebuilt. They retrieve that down to the skiff. double checked, make sure everything was good, double checked a couple things on the inside for the, you know, the propane stove and some other stuff, basically shutting it down again. His buddy Jeff was told, stand guard out on the deck with the rifle. You see anything big and hairy, you just shoot the damn thing, right? So Nikolai's doing his thing. He's running around just trying to be as quick as possible. So together they have to lift this outboard and tote it down. He had a dolly, but the tire broke off of it, so he couldn't just easily dolly it down one person. It took both of them. And so Jeff has a rifle slung, and they're packing this thing down. Jeff is kind of walking backwards at this one part of the trail, because it's approximately 35-45 yards-ish from the bank at the beach. You got to climb up, and then the trail, you know, 35-40 yards to the cabin. So just as they're getting to the point to where Jeff's going to have to step down, he's looking back past Nikolai back towards the cabin. Right over Nikolai's shoulder, this rock, a little bigger than a marble, comes flying right over the shoulder and hits Jeff dead center in the chest. Immediately, Jeff loses his shit. He drops his part of the outboard. He was holding the prop side. He drops that. Nikolai's trying to hold the head of this kicker. Jeff jumps down onto the bank, unshoulders the rifle, and uses the cut back, you know, because it's cut back from the beach, puts the rifle and looking to make sure there's a round, takes this thing off safety, tells Nikolai, get out of the way, get out of the way, it's right up there, it's right up there. Nikolai's trying to set the power head of this kicker down. As he does so, he turns and looks back, and he sees this thing standing right beside the cabin. He's guesstimating where it had to have been standing when it threw the generator at him. And he tells Jeff, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. Jeff's like, fuck that, let's get the hell out of here, dude. Let's go now. Fuck the kicker, fuck all of it, let's go, we gotta go. So Nikolai agrees, of course, but he goes, let's get the kicker in so we can at least get it out of here. So Jeff agrees and tells him, wrestle it down to the boat. I'm gonna cover this thing, I'm gonna keep a beat on it, I don't want to turn my back on this thing. The rock to the center of the chest would have freaked me out too. So Nikolai does so. He wrestles it down there and gets it leaned up against the side of the skiff. He can't just flip it in there, you know what I mean? He could puncture a hole or do something stupid to the boat. So Jeff retreats from where he was at, helps him get in the skiff, and they got out of there. They put it up for sale. They had someone come interested in it. They explained all the reasons, full disclosure of why they were leaving the area and why they were selling it, you know. And the person just kind of, that they're selling it to, just kind of shined them on, like, okay. Didn't phase the person buying it, whether they didn't believe them or it didn't matter to them or whatever. They didn't get into the finer details, but they assured me it was full disclosure, because I was like, you know, did you let them know the craziness going on? And they did. But just to, gosh, that was, can you imagine being a fiance to a woman and going to a strange land you've never been in the woods before, and your introduction to the wilds of Alaska is something like this? Not that it's funny. It, to me, I have a dark sense of humor, so I'm just, you know, kind of looking at it from that standpoint. But anyway, I want to thank Nikolai and Tatiana for sharing that with me. And Robert, better luck next time you go out in the woods. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.